Hello, I'm Dan Cooper, otherwise known as the Frustrated Gardener. And in this short video, I'm going to show you how to plant a container for autumn colour. If you planted your containers in the spring for summer, they might be starting to look a little bit tired now, and that's because annual plants gear themselves up to produce seed at the end of the season, and probably now they're thinking as the days get colder they need to produce seed before they die. So it's a really good idea now just to get a bit of an extra spark of colour into your garden by planting a container now. And with frosts many weeks away still, this is going to last you through Halloween and Bonfire Night and still look good, hopefully into November. Now I've picked out a few plants that I really like, and I'm concentrating on autumn colours for my container that I'm going to plant today. So reds, oranges and yellows, and they really suit the autumn season. They'll look great whether it's Halloween, Bonfire Night or later on as the leaves are changing. I've picked mainly perennial plants for this container as well. So I've got some lovely crocosmia, I've got chillies and I've got bidens here as well, which are going to have lots of lovely colour later on. And when you're choosing plants for container in the autumn, it's really good to choose ones that are just coming into flower, because that's going to give you a little bit longer season of flower when they actually get going. If you pick them already in bloom, then they're going to not last quite as long. So let's start, and I have got a lovely terracotta pot here. Now this terracotta pot is about 37 centimetres in diameter, and I've cleaned it out a little bit, and I'm going to start by putting some moss in the bottom of the pot. Now the reason for putting moss in is mainly to stop the compost from falling out at the bottom of the pot. That stops it going onto your patio or whatever surface you're going to put it on, but it lets the water drain through. Some people prefer to use crocks, and I think probably you've got lots of these hanging around like I have. Crocks are fine, but you have to just be really careful that they don't block the hole up, because what you want really is to let the water drain out of the bottom, and the moss I think does a slightly better job of that. So I've got moss in the bottom, and now I'm going to fill this pot up about 2/3 of the way full with a compost that I've got here, which is free of peat. And really important to use peat-free compost, because peat is a finite resource and we're running out of it. So we really need to use peat-free compost wherever we can. Now this particular compost has got some biochar in it that helps to open up the consistency of the compost. It's got some mycorrhizal fungi in there as well, which really helps to encourage root development, and it's got worm casts as well, which have lots of nutrients in too. But the main ingredient is coir, which comes from coconuts, which obviously we can keep growing and keep using, and actually coir lasts about 3 times longer in the ground than peat does, so it's a much better substitute anyway. So I've now filled that up. It's about 2/3 of the way full, and I'm ready to start planting. Now I'm going to start with the tallest plant first, and that's going to go towards the back. And this is a crocosmia in old money, that's a Montbretia. And as you can see from the buds, this is probably going to be yellow. This didn't come with a name in it, so I don't know what it's going to turn out to be, but it's going to be a nice yellowy orange colour. And crocosmias are perennials, so when you've finished with your pot display and before it gets really cold in the winter, you can pop this out, put it in the garden, it'll die down, and then next year you'll be able to see it coming back through the soil, and you'll get flowers again in summer and autumn. Now do have a look at the root ball when you take the plants out. This one has got a lovely healthy root ball, but it would just help to tease a little bit away and let these roots free from the pot shape that they formed, and that will just help them to grow out into the compost a bit. I should say that at this time of year, anything you plant in a pot is unlikely to grow a great deal more, because the plants are preparing themselves for winter now. So you can afford to fill a container that you plant in the autumn really full of plants, because they're not going to get an awful lot bigger. And if you have gaps, they're probably not going to get filled over. So I've popped that in, and as you can see, the surface of the compost from the pot is about 1 inch down from the surface of this pot, and I'm going to try and get them all on a similar level to that. What you don't want is to bury any plants or to have any sticking up too far out of the ground. So I'm happy with that. Now I want a focal point for my pot, and I am choosing something that is not a hardy plant for this, but I think it's got a little bit of drama. This is an Aeonium, it's a succulent, and it's called Zwartkop, which I think translates as black head. But its common name is a black rose, and I think you can probably see why. So I'm going to take that out of the pot it's been in, and in the case of this one, I'm going to need to put a little bit of compost underneath it to let it sit at the same level as the crocosmia. So I'm just going to pop a little bit more compost in here and keep it on a good level. And there you are, it should sit just there in front of the crocosmias. Now, fortunately, Aeoniums don't have very much of a root ball, so you can really squeeze them in among other things. I'm going to hold on to that whilst I move on to the next plant, because I'm worried it's going to fall over. And here we have a plant called Bidens. Now, this is technically a perennial plant, but most people grow it as an annual, and you'd have to grow it in really free draining soil and give it lots of sun for it to survive the winter, but it might just if you're very lucky. So I'm going to knock that out of its pot, there we go, and that hasn't got too much of a congested root ball, which is good, because I'm really going to have to squeeze this one in. So let me put that pot to one side, and then I'm going to really get this in quite tight there in front and pop it right in, because it's going to be very snug. It won't be growing a lot more now, but I still want it to be happy there. So we've got 3 of our plants in. I think it's already coming together quite nicely, bright and cheerful. With the Bidens, keep pinching the dead flowers out, and more will come, and that should last you a good few months yet. So, to echo the colour of the Bidens, I have got a chilli plant. And again, root ball of that is fine. It might be sitting a little bit low in the pot if I'm not careful, so I'm going to just pop a tiny bit more compost in, just to make a little platform for it. Now, what I love about this chilli plant is, of course, it's not only ornamental, but it's also useful. And I bought this actually at my local supermarket. It's called Orange Wonder, and you can use these chillies. I think they're a medium heat if you do use them, but just bear in mind, if you are handling chillies and chilli plants, just to wash your hands afterwards. Definitely don't touch your eyes, which is something I do occasionally and then live to regret it. So there we go, the chilli plant is in, and I think the colour of the chilli and the colour of the Bidens work really beautifully together. And now we've got one more main plant to pop in here, and that is a heuchera. Now, lots of people love heucheras. They're brilliant foliage plants. They're happy in sun or a little bit of shade, but they have this amazing foliage, and there are so many different varieties that if you go to a local garden centre, you'll find ones with lime green foliage, dark foliage, even coppery coloured foliage. And I've chosen this one because I love the ruffled leaves on it, and it's a variety that's called Black Beauty, and I'm hoping it's going to come nice and easily out of this pot because I've got one hand free. There we go, and it is going to pop in just here in front of the Aeonium. Now again, I'm going to have to really tuck that in and jiggle them about a little bit. Never quite as straightforward as when you plan it all out. And I think I'll move my chilli a little bit further forward. I'm going to turn it around so you can see it a bit better. Now, I would finish a pot like this off normally by putting something trailing over the front, but I haven't got anything quite right today. So I'm just going to fill in some of the little gaps, and I've got this red hook sedge, it's called. It's a little grass. It's a really good plant outside once you've finished with it in a pot. It's hardy as anything. Its Latin name is Uncinia rubra, but if you can't remember that, it's just a red hook sedge. And I quite like that. I think it's got a nice seasonal and maybe even slightly Halloween-y, spiky feel. So I'm going to pop one of those in just here at the front, just to fill a little bit of space. And I will want to look at my pot all the way around. I'm showing it to you from the front. And there's a little gap here at the back. So I'm going to put the last one of these in just at the back. Here we go, it goes very comfortably in there. And I will move this pot forward slightly now just so you can see it in all its glory. Now what I will do now is just use a bit more of the compost to fill in where there are gaps around here. And that's really important because what you want is for the plant's roots to be in contact with the compost, and they will grow away really, really nicely when it's watered. And just to help with that process, when you finish doing that, just take a watering can and water around the bottom of the plants. And what you want really is for the compost to come sort of level all the way around. And the point of watering when you've planted something like this is just to let the soil go down, fill in any air gaps that are in there, and then the roots will be able to grow away really nicely. The other thing I'm going to do, and it's a little bit noisy, so I won't do much of it now, is to put some grit on the top. Now the point of putting grit on the top is manyfold actually. It helps to just give a really neat finish, which I like on my pots, but also it helps to keep the moisture in, and some creatures don't really like crawling over grit. So particularly slugs and snails, if you put grit on the top, it will deter them, but I'm afraid it's not going to stop them. So I will do that in just a moment, but there we have it for now. This is my container for autumn colour. I will go around now every few days and just snip off any little bits that are looking tired. The chillies will keep on coming and the bidens will keep on flowering, and I think in a few days time we're going to have some really fabulous flowers from this Zwartkop. But that will give me colour now for a good few weeks, right to the end of October, maybe even into November, and then I will dismantle it, I will use the chillies, and I will plant the other plants in the garden. So there we have it, a container planted for autumn colour. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please subscribe to my YouTube channel where there'll be lots more of these videos coming over the coming weeks and months. Thanks very much, and thank you for watching.